You're listening to Uptown Radio. It's Wednesday, December 15th. I'm Elena Torek.
And I'm Liz Brewer. Outdoor dining sheds are a boon for restaurants, but not everyone is happy about them. A group of New Yorkers is suing the city.
There's nowhere to ride a bike. What if you're in a wheelchair? Where do we walk?
For many older folks struggling through the pandemic, an adult daycare center in New Jersey is a refuge.
Without that ability to have a place to get up, to get dressed, to go to every day, I think depression was something that settled in.
And we spoke with one of the Republican county officials refusing to enforce Governor Kathy Hochul's new indoor mask mandate.
Those stories and more on Uptown Radio. But first, the news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Coronavirus infections, hospitalizations, and deaths are going up as we head into winter. In the latest pandemic update a short time ago, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who leads the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, laid out the numbers.
The current 7-day daily average of cases is about 117,900 cases per day. The 7-day average of hospital admissions is about 7,800 per day, an increase of about 7.7% over the prior week. And the 7-day average of daily deaths are about 1,100 per day, which is an increase of about 5% over the previous week.
The Delta strain of the variant still accounts for the vast majority of infections, but the new Omicron variant is spreading fast. Citing early data from other countries, Walensky says the CDC is projecting Omicron will account for a larger percentage of infections in the coming weeks. At least 36 states are now reporting Omicron cases. President Joe Biden is in Kentucky this hour, taking stock of the damage from last Friday's deadly tornadoes. NPR's David Shaper reports from Mayfield, Connecticut, where the search and rescue effort continues.
Utility crews here are gradually restoring electricity and water service to the buildings that are still here, while heavy equipment moves in to remove massive piles of debris. 73-year-old Howard Smith, a lifelong resident of Mayfield, tears up when looking at the incredible scope of devastation and wonders how the city will rebuild.
It will take a long time. I don't think people my age will see it back like it was. I hope so, but I don't think they will. I hope my grandkids see it back, but I think it's going to take a while to get it done, really.
The first challenge is finding homes for those here who have lost theirs. David Shaper, NPR News in Mayfield, Kentucky.
No changes to U.S. interest rates are expected to be announced today when the Federal Reserve wraps up its latest policy meeting. NPR's Scott Horsley says the Fed's latest look at the economy and interest rates comes amid the highest inflation in nearly 40 years.
Inflation has stayed higher for longer than the watchdogs at the Federal Reserve expected. And while the central bank still thinks price pressures will ease next year, officials can't afford to take that for granted. Inflation in November was nearly 3.5 times the Fed's 2% target. And while average wages have been climbing at a rapid pace, consumer prices have jumped even faster, eating away at workers' buying power. The Fed is now expected to phase out its big bond buying program more quickly than had been announced just 6 weeks ago. That would open the door to possibly raising interest rates earlier next year. Higher interest rates are the Fed's traditional tool for keeping inflation in check. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow is down slightly. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from Columbia University, I am Sumin Kim. This morning, New York City Mayor-elect Eric Adams appointed Keishant Sewell as the next NYPD commissioner. At a press conference, Sewell said her appointment sends an important message.
As the first woman and only the third black person to lead the NYPD in its 176-year history, I bring a different perspective.
She emphasized that her department will prioritize getting guns out of the hands of criminals. Today, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced his plans for enforcing the vaccine mandate for all businesses in New York City. That's on top of a recent vaccine mandate for children ages 5 to 11 that started yesterday. Business leaders say the mandate could lead to additional worker shortages, but the mayor argues that the mandate is actually pro-business. A man died in a fire in an apartment building on Ralph Avenue in Bed-Stuy just before 4 o'clock this morning. The fire appears to have started in his kitchen. And another apartment fire, this one on 162nd Street in Queens, left 2 more victims dead. a 76-year-old woman, and an 81-year-old man. The cause of the fire is under investigation. COVID-19 cases are once again rising in New York City. Both New York and New Jersey are detecting the Omicron variant at 4 times the national rate. New York Governor Kathy Hochul continues to defend her indoor mask mandate for New York businesses. However, a quarter of New York counties refuses to adopt the governor's mask mandate. Orange County Executive Steve Newhouse compared enforcement of the policy to Gestapo tactics. More on this later in the broadcast. 2 New York colleges announced new rules intended to limit Omicron's spread. Starting January 18th, NYU will require all student, faculty, and staff to receive COVID booster shots, and Cornell University is barring visitors to campus. Final exams have been moved online, and all in-person activities on campus have been canceled. The weather will stay warm today, starting with some sunshine, but there's a chance of spotty rain late in the evening. For Uptown Radio News, I am Soo-Min Kim.
This is Uptown Radio. I'm Liz Brewer.
And I'm Elena Torek.
Last week, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced a new indoor mask mandate that took effect on Monday. New Yorkers are required to wear a mask in all indoor public spaces that don't require proof of vaccination. According to Governor Hochul, it's up to local officials and health departments to enforce the state's mandate.
Several Republican-led counties in New York have decided they will not enforce indoor mask wearing. I'm joined by Mary Ellen Odell, Putnam County Executive, to ask why she has decided against enforcing the mandate.
Thank you, Elena. It's very nice to be here with you today.
County Executive Odell, who lives in Putnam County? What is Putnam County to you?
Well, Putnam County's home to me and has been my home. It's a small county. There's no urban centers. There's no cities. Pre-COVID, about 25% of our population commuted into New York City for employment. We are a county of first responders, fire, and police.
Why are you deciding as county executive of Putnam to not enforce Hochul's indoor mask mandate?
Because we had no heads up or discussion, and without any written guidance, it put us all in a very difficult position. So what we did collectively, the county executives in Rockland and Dutchess and Orange and myself, we immediately communicated with each other about the implications moving forward and decided we needed to know what our position would be, because we all had the understanding that it was an unenforceable mandate because our local health departments are trained in the health field. They're not trained in law enforcement or policing. To put them into a position where they would be responsible to identify and fine an individual, it's quite frankly not practical.
How would the mask mandate affect businesses? How would they have to enforce the mask mandate?
Still very unclear, but what in its original format from the governor was that businesses were to require people to present proof of vaccination, and if they could not provide that, then their customers or patrons would have to be masked. Our local health department personnel would then be responsible to pay visits to these establishments and check and make sure that the businesses had complied with that order. We rely on our Main Street businesses in so many ways. The last thing we need to do is to support something that would be an impediment to them having a successful Christmas season.
Is there a body that could enforce this new mask mandate?
Of course, you have your police departments, but the police departments had said when the previous administration in the state was talking about restaurants in compliance, they wanted to send out the police, and the law enforcement agency said they declined.
Are there places where there should be an indoor mask mandate?
I'm of the opinion, I don't believe in big government. I think that this was a complete overreach. You know, I've said all along, and I share this with my other colleagues as well, we believe if you choose to get vaccinated, that's great. If you choose not to be vaccinated, then you should also be respectful and comply with the mask mandate. People have the right in this country to make their own decisions about their own health, but they also have to be responsible.
Well, County Executive O'Dell, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Elena. Merry Christmas and happy and safe New Year.
Take a walk downtown and you'll notice you're sharing the sidewalk with some pandemic newcomers. No, not the rats. I'm talking about outdoor dining sheds. Nearly half the city's restaurants now have them.
In July, the mayor decided the sheds are here to stay. Restaurant owners are thrilled, but one group of New Yorkers are taking the city to court. Emily Russell reports from the Lower East Side.
It's 4:45 p.m. and restaurants on Ludlow Street are setting up shop outside. The owner of the Japanese restaurant, Izakaya Jiruku, rolls back his dining shed's graffitied plywood doors and sets out his metal chairs. His dining enclosure is no triumph of architecture, but it gets the job done.
Our space is small. We only have 12 seats. We're looking at $500 extra in sales.
2 doors down is Restaurant Set LES. They built an outdoor dining shed double the size of Izakaya Jiruku's. And 6 inches to the right, sandwiched in between these 2 sheds, is an island of hostile territory. At the vintage clothing store Ellen, the sentiment towards these 2 sheds is that they have no place in the neighborhood. Owner Ellen Koningsberg described these outdoor setups as
disgusting, filthy garbage everywhere. Filthy AstroTurf that probably had piss on it.
Glenn, the manager at Set LES, has one response to his neighbor's complaints.
She has her expenses, we have our expenses. You know, we have staff, we have our bills, we have rent. So the only way we can stay open is we have the outside and inside booming. We try to accommodate her. At the end of the night, we sweep up her area, clean up, after us.
This back and forth, tit for tat between residents and restaurants has come to a head. Ellen and 21 other plaintiffs are suing the city to put an end to outdoor dining sheds. Their case demands the city reconsider the mayor's executive order that will make them permanent. Their chief complaints?
There's actually music pumped out into the street, blasting. There's nowhere to ride a bike. What if you're in a wheelchair? Where do we walk? It's only open streets up for people drinking.
The crowd that's coming is like a drinking crowd. It's becoming Fort Lauderdale spring vacation every day.
That's Marjorie Dienstag, another plaintiff. She's lived in Manhattan since 1981, and like Ellen, she detests these sheds. But Marjorie's even more angry at how the city adopted the permanent sheds. A sweeping decree, zoning laws thrown to the wind. Even Jenna Davis, an urban zoning expert at Columbia University, thought this was fishy.
If there is a big change in the zoning resolution, there usually, especially in New York, is months, if not years and years of public engagement that happens before the resolution is passed.
Instead, the city is shoring up public discord by hosting community roundtables this winter. Residents can contribute their 2 cents on the design rules for the permanent sheds. This is of no solace to Marjorie and Ellen.
It's a done deal. They're going to go along with whatever they have planned, and we're just going to have to put up with it.
A solution, they say, is dire. These sheds aren't just keeping them up at night, they're changing the fabric of the city.
This neighborhood was horrible and disgusting before COVID, and now it is way, way, way worse. Nobody cares about anything but the hospitality industry. What about us? What about us?
Marjorie and Ellen's case is active within Manhattan's New York Supreme Court. The city declined to comment until the dispute is resolved. Emily Russell, Uptown Radio News.
The pandemic has been hard on older folks. Nearly 1 in 5 older adults say their mental health has gotten worse during the pandemic. But with loneliness and depression looming large, an adult daycare center in New Jersey is getting creative with helping seniors find community. James Inn reports.
Gathered in a large table by the front entrance, you see a group of elders painting flowers, others munching on snacks, and a few others reading silently. For many, attending the Golden Adult Daycare Center has been the go-to place to heal, get out of their funk, and simply enjoy the presence of others. That's Kim Ryu-hwan. He never thought he'd be singing in front of strangers at the age of 76, but since joining the daycare center over a year ago, he's been slowly coming out of his shell.
이제 나이가 많아서 거동이 불편하고
Ever since I hurt my back, I fell into a deep depression. But coming to the center has provided me with new things to do and allowed me and my wife to be more active in the community.
This adult daycare center is known for getting people back to themselves. Elizabeth Hall is the program director and says that when the pandemic hit and strict lockdown measures were enforced, depression became a huge problem for many of the elders.
Without that ability to have a place to get up, to get dressed, to go to every day, I think depression was something that settled in a lot of the elderly.
To help, Elizabeth and her team had to find creative ways to care for the community. Zoom calls were too complicated, so they resorted to old-fashioned phone calls.
So all the clients are contacted daily. The outreach phone call is to ensure their well-being, to see if they need any medical assistance. We're able to coordinate doctor's appointments and communicate with the family if there's a need.
As COVID-19 began to spread, nearly 1 in 5 older adults say their mental health has gotten worse, according to research done by the University of Michigan. With Golden Daycare Center operating remotely, Elizabeth was focused both on solving logistical issues and making sure they were taken care of while at home.
We're able to receive a care package, which included a breakfast component, yogurt, cheese, fresh fruit, and then a hot meal that came catered from the restaurant in a lunchbox.
Elizabeth would send drivers out to pick up medicine from local pharmacies and deliver supplies to elders' homes to avoid potential exposure to the virus.
So they would get paper towels and toilet paper, especially when that was scarce. We would wait in the long lines and buy all the stuff.
Now that the center is back fully in person, Elizabeth and her team continue to incorporate various programs to keep the group busy. And for the most part, these programs have been working pretty well.
Coming to an environment like this, where we really teach them things, like for them to learn a line dance and then get in front of the group and perform it, or learn how to play the handbells or the piano and get in front of the group and perform it. It's accomplishments for them, and it's nice to watch. It feels good.
The seniors can find comfort knowing that they can stay busy finding new hobbies, new passions, and new friends to be around. James in Uptown Radio News.
You're listening to Uptown Radio. I'm Liz Brewer.
And I'm Elena Torek. Amazon workers on Staten Island are fighting to form a union, and comedian Bailey Pope is changing the conversation about trans issues. These stories and more coming up next.
This is Uptown Radio. I'm Liz Brewer.
And I'm Elena Torek. Workers at 4 Amazon warehouses in Staten Island are trying to form a union. It's an uphill battle for the organizers. Amazon workers have never successfully unionized in the United States, but these workers say they're doing it differently. Will Norris reports from Staten Island.
Every evening, Amazon union organizers set up a tent across the street from one of the 4 colossal warehouses here.
Got the sign-up clips on the tables. Chris is setting up the fire pit and the lights for us. Amazon employees currently walking in.
It's right next to the bus stop where thousands of Amazon workers wait to head home every day. The organizers collect signatures, talk to workers, and give out free food.
Oh, cool, pizza. That's regular. This is pepperoni, I think.
At the center of the scene is Chris Smalls. Smalls was fired from this very warehouse a year ago after organizing a walkout. He launched this unionization effort back in April, and now he's here at the tent every night.
If you'd have asked me that I'll be standing outside of my former facility unionizing, I probably would have looked at you like, you had 10 heads.
Smalls is leading an unconventional campaign. The group is entirely made up of current and former employees, and they've declined the help of a major national union. They're going it on their own. Experts like Kate Bronfenbrenner, a union researcher at Cornell, worry this will limit what the group can accomplish.
If you don't have resources and you don't have staff, you're never going to have a union.
But Chris Smalls points out that past efforts led by national unions have failed. He said that in Staten Island, they're throwing out the playbook.
We're doing it differently, not traditional. But I think you can't be traditional when you're going up against a company like Amazon.
Progress on this do-it-yourself campaign is coming in fits and starts. In late September, Smalls and his team filed to hold a union election with the National Labor Relations Board, but they were soon forced to withdraw the filing when Amazon contested their petition. They now hope to file again when 30% of the Amazon workforce on Staten Island has pledged their support, which is the legal minimum. That's rare. Kate Bronfenbrenner, the union expert, said organizers typically file for an election at more like 70% support.
No one, literally no one, has ever won a major organizing campaign who has filed with 30%.
But Smalls says they don't have the luxury to build more support before filing. Turnover at the fulfillment center is high by design.
We have to go in with the minimum. We're not going to give them too much of a window to continue firing people because that's what they want to do. They want to get rid of everybody who signed.
Amazon declined to comment on this story, but I talked to some current Amazon employees at the bus stop. They wanted us to withhold their names for fear of reprisals.
I already have signed up.
Yeah, I've signed it as well.
And why did you make that decision?
Because I feel like there should be major changes to this building and the way they operate, because they really don't help our employees or support their employees at all.
I mean, I feel the exact same way. I'm very hopeful that it's going to come in and fix shit in there.
Despite the support, Chris Smalls knows time is not on their side. Workers say managers have threatened their jobs for union sympathies. But Smalls still thinks they can win.
Workers can see us on the ground every day, building relationships with them for the past 7 months. It's starting to resonate with them.
Just how much it resonates will be clear if the union finally wins a vote. For Uptown Radio News, I'm Will Norris.
Yesterday, the New York City Department of Education changed admission requirements for the city's public high schools. Instead of relying on standardized tests, high school applicants now have the chance to submit transcripts and rank their top choices regardless of where they live. I spoke to Dr. Amy Wells, a professor of sociology and education from Columbia University, about what this reform might look like. Do you mind explaining the differences between the new admissions requirements that were released yesterday and the previous ones?
I think the main difference from what I've read so far on this is that they broaden the way we think about merit and the way we think about students' ability and talent and how they can demonstrate readiness for high school curriculum in different schools. So it's using less emphasis on standardized testing and emphasis on student work and performance in classrooms.
And will these measures lead to more children going to non-district schools outside of their neighborhoods?
You know, I don't think that part's new. I think that what we should be focused on is that are we doing admissions plans that allow more students to demonstrate high achievement, high ability by looking at the work that they're doing in middle school rather than just focusing on, say, a couple test scores, right? Or other screening policies that high schools can put in place. So some that oftentimes discriminate against low-income students or students of color, particularly in District 2, which has been what's happened. So, or just having district-based choice policies like District 2 has used to keep other kids out of their high schools.
Do you mind explaining kind of the context behind what District 2 has been doing to prohibit certain students from attending their schools?
District 2, for reasons no one's ever fully explained to me, has been allowed to restrict admissions to several of their top high schools, the ones that are most desirable throughout the city, to students who live in District 2. And it's the only district I know of that's been allowed to do that. It's never been well explained why there was such an exception for District 2, although we also know that District 2 has some of the most affluent and politically connected parents in it. I think the fact that this one district isn't going to have that special privilege anymore is a good thing.
This final policy change is coming in the final weeks of Mayor de Blasio's term. Do you think the admissions requirements will change once again? Eric Adams is in office, so for the 2023 to 2024 cycle?
I hope so. I hope that maybe this year there'll be an experience maybe that will demonstrate that some of these other ways of looking at student work and student achievement and defining what it means to be a high achieving student will change the way people think about these admissions policies, and it will, possibly survive, go on after Mayor de Blasio. I mean, it's hard to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wells, for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
New York City is home to thousands of street cats that only got worse during the pandemic. The task force assigned to deal with the overpopulation of feral cats has been forced to slow their work. Marco Schaden reports.
It's dark and eerie out here in Queens, not to mention frigid. But Charlotte Conley of Astoria Cat Rescue is doing the same thing she does every night. Feed the cats.
So here's our first colony here. And it's a very cold night, so we're also a little bit early. And so I don't know if they're going to come out usually.
We get out of the car. Conley reaches underneath a parked car with one of those 3-foot grabber tools you see in the supermarket to collect the remains of the previous night's meal. In the same spot, she leaves wet and dry cat food for the colony.
So a lot of times they'll just hunker down until they feel like, it gets really quiet and they're going to come out and get the food, and then you'll see the next day that there's nothing left. They licked it clean.
There are more than 500,000 feral cats in New York City, and one unspayed female cat can lead to more than 100 new cats within just 3 years. Local organizations like Conley's use the ASPCA's neuter and spay services after trapping these cats, known as TNR, Trap, Neuter, Release. But the unneutered cats, especially the little ones, are becoming a bigger concern after the ASPCA slowed their TNR program since the pandemic began. After briefly pausing spay and neuter service in 2020, the ASPCA has started the program back up and says it spayed and neutered 13,000 cats this year. But that's less than half of its yearly average. Since COVID, have you seen the population jump dramatically?
Dramatically. Yeah.
Conley used to feed the 16 colonies of feral cats by rolling around a shopping cart with food and water. Now, she drives a car that she bought with her stimulus check, hopping from colony to colony.
This one has about 5 cats. The next one we're going to has 12 cats. And I know that because we get paperwork from the ASPCA when we get them fixed. So we keep a log of all the cats from the different areas.
Conley's records might be a little outdated now since she rarely traps the cats since the ASPCA limited the amount of TNR it does. But she still feeds them. It costs her about $3,000 to $4,000 a month just for the food. And even though what she's doing is technically legal, some within the community believe the cats attract other animals and wish she would stop feeding them. Sometimes they yell at Conley and have even called the cops on her. In order not to cause a confrontation, sometimes she has to be sneaky when placing a fresh dish of food and run back to her car. How did that one go?
Mission accomplished. She didn't see me. I learned how to hide behind the cars across the street and almost crawl over there.
Same time tomorrow, the cats know Conley will be back. Marco Schaden, Uptown Radio.
Trans issues are once again in the comedy world spotlight. Recently, Dave Chappelle came under fire for his jokes in his latest Netflix special. But comedian Bailey Pope is showing New York audiences another approach to talking about trans issues. Tasia Palakonda reports.
We have one more comedian. I am so excited for this next comic. Please start clapping. Give it up for Bailey Pope, everybody.
Before starting her comedy career 2 years ago, Bailey Pope was a hairdresser, going around to salons to teach and demonstrate products.
I got to the point where this is the part that I love most about my job is making jokes and having an audience. And I quickly realized that I don't think I don't think I could do life without it anymore.
Bailey transitioned nearly a decade ago, during which time she lost most of her family and friends. Doing comedy has given her a space where she feels accepted. But what happens when one of the biggest comedians in the world turns transitioning into a punchline?
Caitlyn Jenner was voted
Woman of the Year. Her first year as a woman. Ain't that something?
Dave Chappelle's The Closer has become quite a divisive piece of comedy. So much so, Bailey decided not to watch it. So I decided to play her a clip where Chappelle explains his view about a woman's biology.
I am not saying that to say that trans women aren't women. I am just saying that those that they got, you know what I mean?
Oh, women are. Wow. Hot take.
I'm not saying it's not, but that's like beyond impossible.
Why is that funny? It's because you're saying like, oh, well, like that's like a discount version of like the real thing. You're not real. And so what is it? You're not a real person and you're less than.
But even with her frustration towards Chappelle, she doesn't believe that the transgender community is off limits to comics.
Jokes work best when they're about real things that people care about. But I think that we have to always be open to being educated.
And so with every open mic, Bailey is educating audiences around the city on what it's like to be her. Recently, I was able to catch her set at the Phoenix Bar in the East Village, where she talked about having to come out to her mother. Twice.
You remember that movie, Sixth Sense? Do you remember that movie? I like that movie. You ever watch it a second time though? Nope. No reason. Guys, 2 years went by and I had to come out to her again and she was surprised again. Nuh-uh. I don't think so. You've seen this movie. She was trans all along, you know?
Bailey says you don't want to take the wrong lesson from the Chappelle controversy. Don't just shut down the conversation. Just change the approach.
People are afraid to talk about trans issues because it is, it's sensitive and often contentious. There's a lot of really great trans comics that are going to help the world understand in a less serious way.
And you can find those comics in her first comedy production, Fun Gutter. Follow @FunGutter on Instagram for updates on the next show. For Uptown Radio, this is Teja Polikonda.
Well, that does it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Our executive producer today was Teja Polikonda. Leading our staff of reporters is senior producer Kanaya Rogers and producer Marco Shodden.
Director James Ng coordinated our studio production with Emily Russell and Sunny Bean.
Suman Kim produced the news. Senior editor Will Norris led our copy team.
Our instructors Robert Smith and Gilda DeCarli advised our staff. I'm Liz Brewer.
And I'm Elena Torek. Until next time, you can always find us at uptownradio.org. From all of us here at Uptown Radio, thanks for listening.